Alrighty, so sorry about the background sound. Um, this way the people news. One more time at it, okay? Never look just straight forward. Always look around you. Be able to protect yourself by any means necessary, okay? Arm yourself with knowledge. Use that Second Amendment. Not attorney. Not giving legal advice, okay? Anything I say or do is just my opinion, okay? So this is going to be part three of Kirk's hearing. And this was back, uh, I guess, May 15th. So the whole thing, that executive order and all that, put the math to it. I guess it's going to come through any given time now. They said 90 days or something like that. So keep an eye on that. And let's find out what else he's saying. Because, so apparently he had a car without a license plate and all that. And the officers are allowed to not know the law, and they get qualified immunity. But we got to know 34 million laws out there and not be ignorant of it. But the judges can be ignorant of the same law, right? Because they have qualified immunity. Prosecutors get to lie to the grand jury. Cops get to lie. Oh, the judges get to lie. Everybody gets to lie but you. All right, let's go ahead and go.
Worldwide, doesn't matter where you're at, what country you're in, what state time you're in, these rights, law, is superior to any other man-made law, of course, and therefore becomes void for any effect when they arbitrarily convert our right into a privileged license and attach a P to it, which is Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, which also elucidates in Murdoch versus Pennsylvania that they were attempting to claim that the religious culpritors were actively engaged in commerce, because that's really the only real subject matter jurisdiction granted to government as a whole, is to regulate commerce, to protect the people under that general welfare clause, that any corporation who manufactures a product or acts in any kind of business does not cause injury, loss, or harm to the people, which clearly we can all probably agree here. But I think personally,
I want to dig a little further on this, outside the scope. So, they get to regulate commerce. Fine and well and good. All right? But do they get to regulate commerce so far that they're allowed to create a statute for the business owner to violate your rights? Okay? Sit and think about this. So the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. However, the statute says corporations, like a gun shop, says that you must provide a permit before I can sell you a gun. Well, that's contradictory to the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. But they're a corporation, so therefore, the Commerce Clause come in there, because what do they got? They got a nexus. They're a creature of the federal government, or a creature of the state now, right, with that nexus. The trickery is, if they can regulate the business, can they regulate the business so far to violate your rights? And I argue the case, no, they can't. So if it says shall not infringe, Congress or anybody else is not allowed to create a statute for the business owner to force you to get a permit or show proof that you have a permit. And we become so numb and let the government take over the business so much to violate your rights.
they've been failing at this job for a long time. His duties to perform is to protect the people from products that manufacturers manufacture for sale here in America, filled with poisons and toxins and all that stuff. So there's definitely a dereliction of duty in our public servants. But the fact is that the court said, no, they're not acting in commerce, and you cannot license, tax, fee for the exercise of a right. So the first right is the right of personal liberty, freedom of movement, the power of locomotion, be able to go wherever I want to go uninhibited by anything created by our fellow man. Then you have the right of private property. I have the right to the free use of my private property. I do not have to, so here we go again. The legislature has arbitrarily converted our right to have the free use of our private property, which is the third primary absolute right from the laws of nature that Blackstone elucidates, to require us to title and register our private property with the Department of Transportation, which was essentially created from Article 11, corporations, public and private, to regulate the transportation of passengers and freight, has arbitrarily converted that right into a privilege and issued the title and the license plates. That's another license, which is seeking permission to do a thing that would otherwise be illegal, which is a contract. And our right to contract is unlimited, which also includes the right not to contract. But in order to make this very clear, I would like to read from Hale versus Hinkle. And in this case here, it was in reference to a corporation. And to quote Hale versus Hinkle here, 201 U.S. 43 at section 74, or page 74, if, whenever an officer or employee of a corporation were summoned before a grand jury as a witness, he could refuse to produce the books and documents of such corporation upon the ground that they would incriminate the corporation itself, it would result in the failure of a large number of cases, for the illegal combination was determinable only upon the examination of such papers. Conceding the witness was an officer of a corporation under investigation, and that he was entitled to assert the rights of a corporation with respect to the production of its books and papers, we are of the opinion that there is a clear distinction in this particular between an individual and a corporation, and that the latter has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for examination of the suit of the state. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His powers to contractor is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to criminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life and property.
I'm going to pause there for a second as well. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Let's see, what was I going to think? Let's go ahead and proceed forward, because I lost my train of thought.
His rights are such existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state. These rights most certainly are long before the institution of government. He can...
Oh, I know what I was going to say. And after this case right here, and maybe prior to, but more definitely used, when they created that legal definition of the person, right? Well, when you look on Google what the legal definition of person, it goes individual, person, commerce, trust, business, and a couple other things. Okay? So, when you put it in your documents of a individual, you need to clearly establish of a non-commercial individual. Because if you just put in there individual, well, the courts is unlawfully going to say, hey, he admit he's a corporation, right? They're going to nitpick this to death, especially for people that stands up for the rights like him, right? He, sui juris, and the sui juris or pro se, or however you want to divulge in your courts, right? You got to sit there without that attorney being there. they're going to nitpick you to death. They're going to find something. And that judge will allow the prosecutor to use a wrong case. But they will not let you accidentally use a wrong case. But they take advantage of the prosecutor to use the wrong case law.
And can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. So that would be the common law of the land, and not any statutes or especially code, which is Roman civil law. That is a foreign jurisdiction. In the Declaration of Independence, that's elucidated as being subjected to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our law, and subjecting us to pretended acts of legislation. That's a whole other argument and constitutional challenge later. But as it is elucidated here in Hale versus Hinkle, among his rights are a refusal to criminate himself and immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under a warrant of the law. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. There are no rights that I trespassed upon anybody else because there is no complainant, there is no injured party, and the state can't be a party because it's a fiction, it's a corporation. The state of Idaho is actually a corporation listed on Dun & Bradstreet with a Dun & Bradstreet number. So, as a corporation and not government, has no standing to bring a cause of action to begin with. And that's in the motion to dismiss as well. Now, to continue on with Hale versus Hinkle, upon the other hand, the corporation is a creature of the state, which also elucidates that, well, I'm a creation of God, not a creation of the state. So there's lack of personal jurisdiction here. It is presumed to be incorporated for the benefit of the public. It receives certain special privileges and franchises and holds them subject to the laws of the state and the limitations of its charter. So Garden City Police Department is actually a corporation. They've exceeded the laws of its creation by arbitrarily making an arrest without a warrant, or making an arrest without a warrant that is not a crime. Its powers are limited by law. It can make no contract authorized by its charter. Its rights to act as a corporation are only preserved to it so long as it obeys the laws of its creation, and that there's a reserved right in the legislature to investigate its contracts and find out whether it has exceeded its powers. The fact is I do not have a contract. I never have had a contract with it. Well, at the time, did not have a contract with any common carrier. Was not employed as a driver to operate a motor vehicle out on the streets and highways for the transportation of any passengers or freight. As you will see, there will be no evidence submitted here today to support those claims. To the contrary. So, to quote Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, as it is written here, is a municipal ordinance which, as construed and applied, requires religious culpators to pay a license tax as a condition to the pursuit of their activities, is invalid under the federal constitution as a denial of freedom of speech, press, and religion. So those are rights, and our rights are supposed to be, this is the lex non-script of the unwritten law. This is what's supposed to be self-evident that's in the Declaration of Independence. That life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is among these self-evident rights from the laws of nature. That is at the root of all law again. This elucidates to license a right is invalid, void for any effect, and pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, this constitutional law of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the constitutional laws of the state to the contrary are notwithstanding them, which means they're void for any effect. Number 2, the mere fact that the religious literature is sold rather than donated does not transform the activities of the culpator into a commercial enterprise. This elucidates the fact that the activities connected with the exercise of a right cannot transform the activities into commerce, which may be regulated. Number 3, upon the record in these cases, it cannot be said that Jehovah's Witnesses were engaged in commercial rather than religious venture. This elucidates that people were not engaged in commercial activities, denying both personal and subject matter jurisdiction. Number 4, state may not impose a charge for the enjoyment of a right granted by the federal Constitution. This elucidates that a state cannot charge a fee, license, tax for the enjoyment or exercise of a right. Now, we don't need to enumerate those rights, but they actually are enumerated in the Bill of Rights and in our state. Life, liberty, and property cannot be deprived without due process of law. So they are enumerated, but the whole intent of instituting government was that to secure these rights. And as I previously read, anything that comes in conflict with these rights, the laws of nature, is void for any effect. Number 4, state.
All right, we're going to pause it there. All right. Now, soak this in, y'all. All right. We have been put under duress of signing all these quasi-contracts. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be punished, and you have to go through this court as he is going through all this. Right? And sit and think about this. Is we the people corrupt, or are they corrupt? Because there is no reason why he should have to go through a court of appeals on this. Right? All the way from the magistrate up should know these things. They've been educated in these things. But they've been educated enough to go by statutes and bypass the Constitution. They put statutes above the Constitution. They put the code above the Constitution. This is We the People News. Bye, y'all.